What will our future be like? This question is equally interesting to all people living on our planet, residents and presidents. When Vladimir Putin was asked, "What gift would you like to have?" he said, "The gift of foresight." Who can really say what our future will be like? Several decades ago, only a few could have imagined such serious organizations like SCO and BRICS, which allow countries and people to discuss their future and the future of our planet. Globalization is an objective process, humanity is uniting unstoppably, however, a path and means of this unity could be chosen, hence this process could be governed. Then, talking about cooperation in organizations like SCO and BRICS, participants are always faced with the question what ideas would lie at the base of our cooperation. What ideas could the participating countries suggest? Every country has its own culture, traditions and national uniqueness. Could we find in them such ideas of global reach that could unite every country and every nation? Looking at the spectrum of all ideas on Earth, we can distinguish two big ideas. The idea of slavery, which allows a minority to parasitize on the work of the majority openly as well as discreetly and delicately by creating an illusion of freedom. The other one, idea of justice, which prescribes abolition of any open or discreet slavery and instead living a life by conscience and providing social justice for everyone. In order to realize an idea, a conception of its realization and the culture based on it are required. Many people find it obvious that practically in every country on Earth slavery dominates. It's characteristic for relationships between elites and people within a single country, as well as in relationships between different countries. The Western civilization, which is the center of slavery, had been parasitizing on work of many countries for thousands of years. For example, the Opium Wars in China, colonization of India, slave trading in Africa, robbery and genocide of native people of Americas and the millennium-long aggression towards Russia. These parts of the world history show the enslavement essence of the Western conception of globalization and the culture formed by it, which the West had been imposing to the world. The first attempt to build a just society on Earth became USSR. For the first time, the world was presented with the idea of building a society of social justice, which did not and still doesn't have a contender. USSR had begun the process of the idea's realization, but had not in time developed a conception of its realization and formed a new culture. Although USSR had created a base for its creation, because of that Russia is now stepping into a new level of development. It's not for nothing that the West hates Russia most of all and portrays it as a boogeyman for its own population. That attempt at building a just society failed, but this doesn't mean that the idea had been wrong or that Russia had discarded the idea. Today, Russia is in the spotlight for people in many countries of the world. Today, while being not just a country but a civilization responding to wishes of those people, Russia suggests not only the well-known to people of many countries, China, Vietnam, Mongolia, Egypt, Cuba and others, idea of social justice, but also a full conception of its realization. Let's try to comparatively analyze all means of social governance, from the weakest to the most powerful, from positions of two conceptions of globalization. The Western, the essence of which is described in the Bible, and the Russian conception. The analysis would help us understand which methods each conception uses and what each proposes for the people of the global nations. The sixth priority, military. At this priority, conventional kinds of weaponry are used, means of destruction of people, objects and monuments. What policy do those who had created the biblical conception of governance implement at this priority? We can see that the West, governed by this conception, without hesitation intrudes into business of other countries who don't comply. This military intrusion is varied between a direct military aggression to the producing of coups. The aim of these methods is to make a country work in the interest of the conception by any means. These means are also supported by the arms race and the increase of West's military bases around the world. All in all, such acts could be described as a policy of double standards and aggression disguised as spreading of the democracy. What does the Russian civilization offer? Russia stands against wars in any form and proposes resolution of conflicts by means of discussion and talks between all interested sides. Russia offers protection of any country from intrusions in their business by aggressors like the West, regardless of their excuses, like in Iraq, Libya, Egypt, Syria and other countries. A future task is mutual reduction of armies globally when the freed resources could be used for peaceful deeds. The fifth priority, means of genetical modification. This priority underlines control over genetics of the Homo sapiens in order to support either degradation or development. At this priority, the willy dealers of the biblical conception of globalization pursue a goal of suppression of biological health of people to improve the quality of their governance over the crowd. This is done through narcotization of the global population, examples of which are the genocide of American natives by the firewater and today's deliveries of drugs from Afghanistan under the US cover. Usage of dangerous food supplements, medications, domestic chemicals and other harmful substances. This also relates to genetically modified plants and seeds, which are promoted by companies such as Monsanto, as well as genetic engineering applied to humans. This priority also includes the nuclear threat. What does the Russian civilization have to offer? To aim science at development of eco-technologies and inclusion of the technosphere into the biosphere with the goal of preserving human and nature's well-being. To exclude from consumption any substances which may harm health, including legal highs, alcohol and tobacco. In this context, the Russian variant of globalization offers countries of SCO and BRICS to implement a project of attractive and safe lifestyle of the future. The fourth priority, economic. The economic priority means governance of economics and finance. What does the biblical conception of governance offer at this priority? For centuries, the West's policy in areas of economics had been based on the financially budgeting approach, the ultimate goal of which is profit. Hence, the policy comes to the systematic robbery of countries that are not part of the West. In return of resources which other countries are supplying, the West pays with shiny dollar papers that are not backed by anything. This is why the US and the EU debt has reached such astronomical heights. The main tool of the Western conception is still usury, giving loans with an interest rate and the following it economic dependency of individuals as well as countries. What does the Russian civilization propose? Organization of the economics based on the organizationally technological approach based on satisfaction of natural, i.e. demographically dependent needs of all people on Earth without harm to nature or the people themselves. This approach needs a different architecture of the credit and finance system based on zero interest rate, long-term planning and policy of gradual price reduction. A stable base for SCO and BRICS would be creation of the energy system independent from the West and introduction of the energy invariant, an exchange product which makes setting of fair prices and direction of economy towards the interest of working people possible. The third priority, factological. This priority includes theologies, secular ideologies, technologies and facts of all branches of science, mass media. What's implemented by the forces of the Western civilization at this priority? The principle divide and conquer is implemented, the battle between science and religion, between ideologies. Instead of the truth, people are put before the choice of two lies. Trust to God had been replaced with various forms of atheism, materialistic, God doesn't exist, and idealistic, of different churches, belief in God instead of trust to God. Mass media forms people's worldview that distorts reality. Science is closing opportunities for people to understand how the real world works. What does the Russian civilization propose? At this priority, Russia proposes aiding formation of friendship between nations and representatives of different confessions, regardless of possible mismatches between theologies and ideologies. Mass media should give the fullest and the most reliable information possible. Science and technological development should solve societal problems by becoming meteorologically competent. The aggressive technosphere on Earth should be replaced with an eco-technological civilization built in harmony with nature. This means moving away from megapolises and creating networks of small, ecologically clean and safe towns and villages. The second priority, matrix algorithmic. The global history process had always been flowing through some scenarios, matrices of development. The future is always multivariant. Which path in this multivariant matrix a person or humanity should take depends on scenarios which exist in the culture of the society and are chosen by the power players. These scenarios could be expressed in society's culture, art, sculpture, architecture, music, literature and cinema. How does the Western conception of governance work at this priority? Today this conception forms irredeemable scenario of the future, particularly the Western cinema often shows the end of the world. The same is in the news: meteorites, global warming, the end of the world, aggressive aliens. All of this together forms a continuous tunnel scenario in the global culture which slowly but surely leads humanity towards a global catastrophe. While in Russia and many other countries the leading political force is led by pro-Western and biblical people, this process would continue to run. The Russian civilization suggests a different approach to the past and hence to the future. This doesn't only include work with the past, which requires making history an exact science and understanding what caused today's problems, but also the work with the future, creation of a new culture, music, cinema, art, architecture. Directing this culture's development, aspiring to be creative and to move towards good ideals, peace in the world and justice for every nation on earth. Worldview and methodological priority of governance. This priority includes information of worldview importance, methodology. This information is the base of our cognitive culture and our fullness of the governance ability. How does the Western conception of governance act at this priority? It blocks opportunities for accessing worldview information by trying to pass lies for the truth. To support this, many instruments exist. The Bologna process for higher education aimed at dumbing down population and decreasing the average education level in all countries. A Western policy acted through the US that promotes perversions into the life of normal people, even though globally perverts represent 1% of the population. All these and other measures block opportunities of cultural and moral development of our society, hence blocking the building of the true democracy as a society of developed humans. A society which would offer open and full access to any knowledge, first of all the knowledge needed to govern. The Russian conception of globalization proposes building of a just society based on principles of total governal literacy so that every person could explore their cognitive and creative potential and could become a true human. In order to build such a society, we need to keep in mind that to attain freedom, it's not enough to learn the minimum curriculum in school and higher education, learn a prestigious profession, have high income and free time. Do all the above and be able to develop new skills and knowledge, because at this level the lack of freedom is only beginning, when an individual falls into permissiveness and does evil which would be suppressed by life. The freedom attainment level is the only one. A person who acts by their conscience understands the objective difference between good and evil, and taking the side of good, attains the ability to learn and produce new knowledge and skill from scratch and in time. They become living in harmony with themselves, other people, nature, cosmos and God. Hence they become independent from elite corporations and circumstances of life. We think that the ideal of building a just society without any open or discrete forms of slavery, where everybody is given an opportunity to learn the most important knowledge from childhood, is the base, with support of which any individual from any country of the world could become human. This also responds to the principles of true socialism and Islam, and has no contradictions with our friends and partners from SCO and BRICS countries. Integration of our countries on the basis of worldview at the first priority would ensure the maximum stability of our union before any aggressor. Building such a system would ensure global safety once and forever. In order to achieve this goal, first of all, governmental and educational personnel base should be formed, and this process had already begun. Unity based on a new conception of globalization could not only ensure stability of SCO, BRICS and any other alliance, but would also enable them to become the leader of global development. That, in its turn, would lead to formation of a humane and just global culture of humanity. Then they could rightly call the new era of humanity's development the era of global unity.